Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer based in Charleston, South Carolina, who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is presented this year by Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you follow this podcast, then you know I had a chance to drive a Townsend Honda CR-V late last year. Besides its really impressive gas mileage, up to 34 miles to the gallon, I loved the backup camera and ease of handling through those Appalachian twists and turns, from heading off the parkway to street parking in downtown Boone. Buying your Honda from Townsend Honda means purchasing from a family-owned company built on service and connection with its customers. And they want to remind you of the joys of a jaunt down the road. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory, or if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Honda salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. The Southern Fork's culinary sponsor is Zoop, Good Really Good Broth. As you know, I aspire to run a no-waste kitchen, so I make some homemade broth out of chicken bones or shrimp shells. But since broth is such an important recipe building block, I simply don't make enough to use in all of my recipes. Sometimes I like to enjoy a cup of bone broth in the afternoon, too. That's why I'm really glad that Zoop Good Really Good Broth is available at so many natural and mainstream retailers across the country, including Walmart, Sprouts, and Kroger, plus online at walmart.com, zoopbroth.com, and Amazon. Developed by the team behind Zoop Eatery. You listeners in the Midwest and East Coast, you know how good it is. This flavor-first product is kettle-cooked in small batches and completely free of artificial ingredients, preservatives, hormones, gluten, and GMOs. The lineup includes new seafood broth and new spicy chicken bone broth, plus original and low-sodium chicken broth, veggie broth, chicken and beef bone broth, and certified organic chicken and organic veggie. And since Zoop Good Really Good Broths come in glass jars, they're easy to reuse in the kitchen or recycle. Southern Fork listeners can get 20% off their first purchase by using the code Southern Fork on Amazon. That's Southern Fork, all one word, on Amazon. Delicious, convenient, and good for you. Zoop Good Really Good Broths are a great pantry staple. Browse delicious recipes and learn more at zoopbroth.com or by following Zoop Good Really Good on Facebook and Instagram. Nashville is a true Southern culinary scene with some seriously good food. And the chef I first associated with this pop star of a city was Tandy Wilson of City House, a restaurant in Germantown whose screened-in porch is as welcoming as the breezes it gets on a summer day. Wilson's focus on growing relationships with local farmers to build his Italian menus was not the norm when his restaurant began, but now chefs all over the region are following in his footsteps, doing just that. This Nashville native has been nominated for 8 James Beard Best Chef Southeast Awards and finally won on his 8th. And yet for him, these days, the cooking isn't so much about star turns on event circuits as it is the daily practice of it, from sourcing to prep to good old-fashioned hard work. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Tandy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for having me as you're preparing for evening service.
Yeah.
We're sitting masked up and safe here out on the outdoor, kind of screened-in porch outside a city house. And this is considered Germantown, right?
This is Germantown.
So you've been in this spot
13 years.
Well, of course, we're going to talk a lot about how things have changed, and now you're the elder statesman, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And this scene has really, really shifted. This is my 5th time in Nashville, and it's so different every time.
Yeah, absolutely. For even people that live here.
You're fortunate here. You've got this space here. How have you been dealing with this?
It's been a lot of work, but fine, I guess. You know, you just gotta take what you can every day. I don't think you've seen, but we have some bungalows in our back parking lot.
That's where we are going to be tonight, right?
That's been really big, and we're really fortunate to have space to put a structure up and separate people back there, and giving them option of safer dining.
We need to start out by this. I've read a lot about you, of course. We've seen each other across the way at food festivals, but we haven't really interacted that much. But Jennifer Justice did a really good piece about you last year in the local Palette, or I thought it was good.
I love everything JJ does.
She's an amazing writer, and she had a quote from you, which I think is a great place for us to begin, and that was when she was talking about the belly pizza. And she was saying that for a while, she quoted you as saying, like, for a while it was like your hit song and you wanted to take it off the menu. And then you realized that that was the way for people to engage with the restaurant, to start to feel comfortable. As a chef, how do you walk that line between wanting to do your thing and then wanting to lead and teach the diner? Because you have to do it in a way that's gentle and welcoming, right?
Certainly.
You don't have to, but it's nicest.
If you want it to work,
right,
you usually have to. And I think establishing trust of saying, I'm not just going to do something crazy for no reason and hope it tastes good and put it out there. So I think that is a little of how you get them to kind of go towards your newer ideas and your newer passions.
When you're thinking about a dish, and obviously seasonal and working with farmers, and you have a really deep Rolodex at this point, do you still test that idea for yourself, like consciously, or has it just become a muscle here?
You know, we've really very rarely tested food here.
No, but like the idea of like, do you think they're going to do it, or they're going to be comfortable, or who's going to like this dish, or do you just say, I got them now, I can do what I want?
Yeah, I think, and we still have our flops without a doubt. So I think more the intention now is to just do what we're feeling, and I feel like as long as we can represent what we've done over those 13 years, a little bit here and there on the menu, then we certainly have the freedom to explore.
13 years in the same place in a culinary world is like an eternity. You know, I mean, just because of the grind. How do you see your cooking that as it's evolved, as it's changed?
I think I've always kind of known that it's humble food. It's family type of food. It's grandmother cooking. And I think for a long time, I had problems saying, well, this is who I am. And so maybe I should put a little something fancy here, or maybe just use this side of the plate tonight or something like that. And beside my peers' food for a long time, I was like, well, the food is ugly. It tastes great. But it doesn't have any snap to it. It doesn't look good on the plate. And I think when I really settled into those roots of who I am is when it really started to change, and the food really started to look good too.
Really?
And present well, and in its simplicity. I think you learn where to focus. And while cooking the food for the diners, for the guests, as they're in the restaurant is super crucial, so much of how it looks really happens in prep. In the early day, and that's why I spend a lot more early days here.
I know so many executive chefs that have really switched from like that expo line, right?
Yes, well, a lot of it's survival.
Right,
you
right.
can't work that late and stay sane for forever. It's just impossible. And a lot of chefs are parents as well, or maybe they just start waking up earlier, and if you're waking up at like 7 a.m, and then you're working till, there's only so much. A lot of sleep is the real key to staying after this.
Well, and also just being grounded too.
Right.
Like, knowing that focus can happen, and knowing that it's just a lot of like moving parts too. And if you're ungrounded on 4 hours of sleep for 4 years, you're not going to be able to keep all those parts going.
That's right.
Yeah, I feel like that's not just here. It's not just in the culinary world. That's just as a human, I think. Do you feel like your cooking has changed since you had kids?
I don't know that it's changed too much. I think I feel even for a long time I used rules to kind of, as my dad would say, hold it in the road. And it did, and it kept us very much as a Italian and Southern restaurant. But, I got a couple of Vietnamese inspired dishes tonight, and I just feel comfortable to do what I'm feeling now. I like to flex the muscle of the kind of thing I did forever and ever, but you got to have the freedom to do new stuff too.
Well, and I think you've built that foundation. You've built that freedom.
And I think a lot of the guests that come here love to see something cool and new, so they can sit down and eat that same belly ham pizza they've had for 13 years, but they can also try this new dish.
Well, we need to talk a little bit about Nashville and how it's changed, and there's good and bad things about it, for sure. What do you think has been the biggest shift from inside your kitchen looking out?
Well, I think from inside the kitchen looking out, I see a lot more availability. I see a lot more local farmers putting produce out for the whole year round, which was just really not the case at all. Everything wrapped up in November.
Hoop houses and stuff like that.
Right. And it's, it's not a good thing, but it's warmer. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And it's changing how long they can even farm just plain old outdoors now. So that while that's not great, we still do receive, through hoop houses and other growing, produce year round, which is essential. The meat that we can get our hands on in this area is, great farming practices, regenerative farming, humane. And that wasn't always the case at the beginning. So I see a lot of positives from standing in the kitchen, looking out. There's a lot of other restaurants coming to town, and so guests continue to be excited about dining, about going out to eat. And so that only helps us.
Right. And just to mention that, it's something that I've always been fascinated with. There's a community of chefs here, you know, of the culinary folks, and you're talking to each other, and you're saying, hey, I like this farmer. If you buy from them too, they can drive it in for us instead of us having to go out and get it, because it makes it more viable for them. Do you feel that sense of camaraderie still here?
In normal times.
Yeah. This
Quite
has been
honest,
one of those places that it's not like that. Right?
Yeah, I'm just working so much, and then everything else I have is for my family. I don't have a lot of time, you know. I'm at a stage in life where I do my best to keep up with my friendships.
Yeah.
But it's challenging, no doubt about it, and it's just simply putting the hours in through COVID has been a real thing.
It has been a real thing, and I think we've all realized, at least in my job, like I already sat in a room by myself, you know, and so now I'm just doing that and then clocking out and sitting in another room by myself in another part of the house, you know. So there's a silo aspect to it, because you have to keep your restaurant employees and staff safe, and you have to minimize risk as much as you can, and and then that just means that you have to work more because you have a smaller staff, and
and we're not seeing a lot of people socially and things like that. So it really just it really was through farming and agriculture, and obviously charitable outreach and philanthropy in the community. Those were where we always saw each other. And, you know, so the big parties are canceled right now.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. So we don't get to see each other. And, you know, that's when you tuck off in the corner with your peers and catch up and talk about things. And so that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it also happened in bars. I haven't visited bars in a very long time.
Right.
And I think a lot of folks age out of that, out of going to the bar. And so they're not around that anymore. But also Nashville is huge now. So you're not going to drive across town to go to the bar to have a few beers. You're going to do it where you can have your vehicle in a safe place and get home the right way as easy as possible now.
Exactly.
You know, you're not going to be like, yeah, let's everybody meet up for beers here. It's just not that convenient anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, the construction is insane.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I live west of town, and I just kind of scoot in on the outskirt and then scoot back, and it's really good for me. And that's like a whole nother reason, you know, that because I stay out of the madness.
Yeah. Since we were just joking and saying, like, you're the elder statesman, and you said, yeah, absolutely. Would you be willing to talk about why it's important? I have a lot of chefs that listen to the show, younger chefs that are line cooks, aspirational. Why it's important to, like, pay attention to the madness and, you know, reduce the amount of time you're in it?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a physical and mental toll that it takes, and you can't deny that. And I think it is lots of times as I know as a cook, coming up in the business, you know, I put it all off on, you know, I have social anxiety, and no, I didn't. But that's something you have to practice. Everybody has to practice that in life. Now, some people are more outgoing and more social than others, but at the same time, if you don't practice, you're going to be real lousy at it. And, you know, you'd pin it on that. And so you'd stay in the kitchen and hammer down and just do, you know, next thing you know, you got bad knees and carpal tunnel, and you're angry and you're drinking too much, and that's what happens. And I can tell you firsthand, it'll grab you. I'm an alcoholic. I have not had a drink in 9 years. But it grabbed me, and boy, they feed it to you in this industry, and all that stuff just starts compounding until you're just miserable.
And sustainability in this industry, we're starting to talk a lot about that, but we're not talking enough about the sustainability of the people.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. You got to take care, Hey, people can't work these long weeks, and you can't have just endless amount of overtime crammed on people, or you'll just keep watching good people wash away.
Right. Right.
If people need time, they need time for themselves. They need time with their family. They need time to heal and to get out there and, exercise, feel right. All that's real. It really works.
It really does, doesn't it?
It really works.
And also, like, the other stuff isn't going to go away.
No, it just hides back there.
Right.
And, I always make fun of, men, because my wife will say, well, what do you think about that? And I say, well, I think I'm just going to compartmentalize that and push it off to the back where I don't have to deal with it. And that's her reaction. I get it from her every time. She thinks it's hilarious. And it is, because it's true.
There's a kernel of truth for sure in that.
So, I like to have fun with that now, because so many kind people have taught me that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to the food just for a minute, because you're still so good and you're still so interested in what you're doing. What captured you about professional cooking?
I think I fell in love with cooking first. At home. My mom always cooked. My grandmother's always cooked. We always ate so good. And I fell in love with food. I grew up pretty sheltered, and it was a pretty suburban upbringing. And
my mom cooked every night. We had a big backyard. We had a garden.
Right.
I get you.
Yes.
I was right there with you. We're probably close to the same age too.
Yeah. And I thought that was it. And I went to college to go learn about the food business a little bit more, because our family business was food sales.
Right.
And I got a job washing dishes in a kitchen, and there were all these different people in there, and everybody was nuts. And I was like, this is the coolest shit ever.
It's just so cool to be around so many people just doing it.
Yes.
Right.
And I mean, people that had cool cars, and, that all kinds of different walks of life, listening to different music. I'm like, I've never heard anything like this before.
Right.
Anyway, I fell off the deep end immediately in the people at that point, and the kind of crazy lifestyle and the fun intensity. I really fell for it.
Obviously, the crazy lifestyle has to change. It has to evolve, or you don't last.
Right.
That's something we just talked about. Do you still have that kind of, sometimes that plug in to that kind of feeling that you originally had?
Yeah, I mean, I still love the people.
Yeah.
I still really love the people. And it's still true. Like, I still meet somebody from a different walk of life all the time in this business. And, talking about age, I don't feel my age. I might feel my age in my feet when I get home from work at night, or I might feel my age in my right wrist and forearm pretty regularly. But otherwise, I don't feel my age, because I hang out with people that, are in their 20s and 30s all the time.
And you're interested in things. I think age is, like, when people say you're getting old, I think it's a lack of curiosity more than anything.
I could totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I could totally agree with that. And so, the people is that I will always love the people.
You can't see it, but I'm really smiling big behind this mask. I'm really in it for the people.
Yeah, the people are great.
And the way to connect to people through the plate. But, like, when you cook, I want to eat your food so I can kind of learn non-verbally your point of view about a few things.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we can sit down and talk about something else.
That's right.
But yeah, it's just always interesting, always diverse. And I've had the COVID conversation for a year. It's really hard to skip around that, but I think the day-to-day life, like you're saying, you just deal with it. You're changing. You have to do it. You've got the spaces. What is making you hungry? What are you interested in?
I've been cooking a lot of Korean food at home. I'm particularly interested in what an 8-year-old and what a 2-year-old will eat that their parents will also find interesting and want to eat.
That Venn diagram where they cross over.
Right. Trying to find that area of that's been a big one for me. And agriculture is still really high on my list.
Do you have a garden?
Yes, we have a garden. I compost all of our...
I am obsessed with compost.
I'm terrible at it, so I could use a few tips, to be honest. But I think I've almost got one going, and the other one is just beginning. So
it is like my zen place to there's something to me very exciting. Number one, I've always flipped over bricks in the backyard to see what was under them.
Right.
But to see things it's literally what we would consider trash.
Right.
My bills, the inside of my paper towels.
Right.
The ends of cucumbers, and see them here.
Right.
Slowly.
Right.
It's
Slowly.
fascinating to
Right,
me.
right. Right. And then you get to put them back in the garden.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then I started to realize how many eggs I'm eating. I'm like, this is an amount of eggshells that it's probably a little much.
Right.
Korean food.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm intimidated to even think about building a pantry for that, personally.
There's a couple of ingredients, they're like anchovies, but they're whole, and you get them frozen, and, dried shiitakes, and a few, really key things for broths, and then the chilies, and you're pretty much there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's one aspect of this job that really meshes like a puzzle piece with an aspect of your personality?
I think we're, relatively easygoing here. And I think that meshes with me. It's not too flashy. It's very homey. And I think that shows.
I've always seen you exactly like this.
Yeah.
This is it, right?
I intentionally wear the apron from the linen company for a reason. And I come to work and work in the kitchen and cook the food for a reason. And those are all part of how I want to represent myself as a chef.
Right. What keeps you up at night?
Bad food.
Bad food. Explain.
Bad food. It keeps me up with a stomach ache.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost always bad wheat, and wheat that's been harvested improperly that turns into a big stomach ache for me. And then I start thinking about the agricultural practices that led it to be that way.
Right.
And that takes me to where the planet's heading, unfortunately.
And then it's hard to get back to sleep
Sometimes
at that point.
after all that, yes.
So I think about wheat starting bad, not being harvested bad. Can you explain what that difference is?
There's bad beginning to end. There's really bad genetics in a lot of our wheat right now. But one of the real big crimes is, when a wheat crop comes ready to harvest, it's a brown field like we see in the movies,
right,
that they're running their hands over these.
The Budweiser commercial.
The Budweiser commercial. That's a great one, right? Well, a wheat field doesn't really ripen that way, and there are splotches that are still alive in it when they need to be taking the wheat from the field. In the old days, they just go around that, and lots of times the people that were harvesting the field for you could go back on their own time and take that wheat for themselves. But now we use these big
combine things.
Super expensive combines, right? And so they can't run over that or it'll mess them up. So when they're ready to harvest the field, they just douse it in Roundup and it kills the whole thing. But the Roundup's all over the crop, and then the Roundup, the wheat, goes for its last gasp of life and sets up a few more wheat berries that eat some Roundup that we then end up eating. The whole thing is really...
Honestly, Tandy, I never knew that until just right this second. And that is extremely frightening.
And it's not a agricultural practice that they're not trying to tell you they don't do. It's not even something they're hiding from us. It's just something that's not talked about. So everyone runs around saying, I'm gluten intolerant. I have a gluten issue. And so we just say, I'm not going to eat it from this one symptom. Gluten is the hardest thing for us to digest out of a wheat product, but that's not the problem here. The problem is it's our agriculture, starting at the genetics and going through the harvest.
Well, and I've talked to a lot of bakers and I write a lot about local grains and milling and that kind of thing. I was actually talking to Kyle Giacovino over in Savannah last week about he's using different regional mills for the sourdough, pizza dough.
Sure.
And how they change and shift and changes his baking and stuff.
Right.
And we were talking off mic about, a lot of people when they go to Europe, they don't seem to have that gluten allergy.
Right.
So
their agriculture,
figure out something there, right?
You can look at that because the European agricultural practice isn't the same, and they didn't just give up on these seeds, these types of wheat that they've been growing for so long so easily. It was a lot easier to get farmers to switch here. And once they got them in that industrial cycle, getting out is very, very difficult.
Right. It's a whole nother show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. We can talk a lot about this. Because it is. I mean, it is really hard because you've also doused your land in that.
Yes.
It's not just our little miniature compost that are going to bring that back.
It's not. And they get you tied into these big companies where you have to use this from them and that from them, and we need you to use this machine now. And that is, they're just really raking farmers over the coals.
Yeah.
And
it's hard
big
to
ag doing it.
Yeah.
Big time. Farmers go out of business more and more,
You shouldn't have to be subsidized as an industry in order to make a living, right?
No, right.
Right. That is a bad 3 a.m. thought.
Right.
I'm telling you.
And it's our food.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. All right. We're not going to have that kind of wheat, but I do have a magic picnic basket. It's my last question every time. I can go back in time. I can conscript anybody to make anything. I'd love to bring you some of your favorite dishes. What would I bring you in that picnic basket? Oh. I don't do death row because I don't believe in death row.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Okay. I like that. I definitely a barbecue sandwich.
Okay.
That's
Martin's?
Yeah, that would be my that's one of those things. Peaches. I would like peaches in that. And it would definitely be pizza. I mean, pizza's that's my thing. I believe in all pizza. There is bad pizza, but there's all different kinds of great pizza. So it would certainly be pizza.
Excellent. I feel like I'm always more pizza than pasta. Although I love good pasta, I feel like pasta can be bad.
Yes. Yeah.
Really easily. Pizza, I'm like, not as.
Yeah.
It's a little harder.
I think so because I think we have a more defined idea of what good pasta is, right?
Yes,
and so you get outside of that pretty easily. But, we could go have some junk food pizza made with some really terrible wheat that would taste delicious.
Yeah, with those pepperonis that become cups.
Yeah, right.
And you're just kind of like, I'm cool with that now.
Right, absolutely.
Well, if people want to learn more about Tandy Wilson and City House and, all of the delicious things that are coming out of this restaurant, you can go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as the images so you can see the face behind the voice. We're talking 215 episodes at this point, so I've been doing this a long time, and we're holding chopsticks for microphones, and I feel pretty good about that.
That's awesome. That's great all around.
So thanks so much for talking to me while the fire is being stoked behind us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. You heard me mention today on the show that I got to visit Tandy while he was working prep before evening service. And honestly, that is one of my favorite things about this job. Whether I'm writing or I'm podcasting or I'm coming in with a photographer to shoot a dish, is that I get to go to a restaurant when it's not in service. So the reason why is because I really love that time of day. From my years working in restaurants before I started working in this industry, or kind of when I was trying to do both, there's something about that time of day, the quiet morning prep or early afternoon prep. You can hear the radio from the kitchen playing music or a podcast or news. You can also, notice and have to walk around wet floors because someone has just mopped. There's just this murmuring sounds of just industry, whether that's chopping, a muted chopping coming from the kitchen, or just the sound of a mop hitting the floor or polishing silverware or glasses. And it is really like going backstage. If you've ever been in theater, I was in theater and drama when I was in high school. And there's something fun about that backstage. It's kind of messy. It's not for the audience eyes, but that's where a lot of the work gets done. And so I'm very fortunate to still get that pleasure and visit restaurants before they're open without having to be waiting tables or getting my section ready or wearing that stupid man tie that more than one of the places where I served required me to wear. So anyway, I do not like wearing a tie. And this way I don't have to. I just get to bring a mic. So I like that sneaking in a restaurant. And when I was editing this piece, I thought about that quiet time that Tandy and I spent together last week. So thanks so much for listening, and get ready for more Nashville content coming your way next week and beyond. Have a great week. You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?